Imagine this for a second. The man who once controlled life and death in France, dragged out in front of a crowd, his jaw broken, blood all over him. He couldn't even speak. He couldn't beg. He just sat there, silent, while the guillotine claimed one ally after another, before it finally came for him. That was Robespierre's end, and trust me, it was far uglier than the history books make it sound. Robespierre had risen to power as the self-appointed incorruptible, the stern voice of virtue of the French Revolution. By 1794, however, his name was synonymous with terror. He had ruled through the Committee of Public Safety, the revolutionary tribunal that condemned thousands to death. Anybody who was suspected of counter-revolutionary leanings, aristocrats, clergy, even former supporters, was marched to the guillotine. But power begets enemies. Robespierre's allies deserted him by July, frightened at the thought of becoming his next victim. He was denounced on the 27th of July within the National Convention. Anarchy erupted. Soldiers stormed his Hôtel de Ville headquarters in Paris. What ensued made his destruction a public spectacle. When Robespierre was arrested, he was found with his jaw broken, whether it was from an unsuccessful suicide attempt, a botched assassination by one of his faithful followers, or the bullet from an adversary remains a point of contention. All that mattered then was this. When he was pulled out by soldiers, his face was smeared with blood, and his lower jaw was shattered and hanging loose. Imagine the scene. Other prisoners who were brought to the guillotine that day walked on foot with heads held high. Others shouted out their dying words, others sang. But Robespierre, he couldn't even scream. His hands were bound, his mouth was also bound, bandaged carefully with blood-soaked bandages to hold his jaw in place so it would not disintegrate. He was dragged out into the streets, no longer the ruler, but the instrument of destruction. Crazed crowds that once shuddered at the mention of his name now jeered and spat upon him. Children pointed and mocked the once feared dictator. One witness recalled that he looked like a corpse already. And then there was the scaffold. 22 of his closest friends were beheaded before him, including Saint-Just, his loyal second-in-command. Robespierre was forced to watch, unable to scream, unable to speak, as the guillotine fell and fell and fell. Each thud of the guillotine drove the message home. Your turn now. Finally, around 6 o'clock, his turn arrived. We prefer to imagine the guillotine quick, a fall, a rapid death. But Robespierre's eye sees the truth. The machine may be as cruel as the rope or the rack. When the executioner stripped off his bandages, the jaw tightly bound for hours suddenly splintered asunder. Robespierre gave a muffled, inhuman cry, half roar, half gurgle. The audience burst into approbation, not sympathy. He was held back, his blood dripping on the wood. Next, the knife fell, severing what was left of the man who had once wielded the power of life and death in France. A cry arose among the crowd. It was not just killing Robespierre, it was killing the terror. Robespierre's death was ironic. The man who had cried out for virtue by terror was assassinated in terror himself, mutilated, stammered, and mocked. His death is a reminder that the revolution had devoured its own masters, the same way Danton and Hébert had already died. But it also forces us to face the fiction of humane execution. The guillotine was celebrated as civilization, a scientific way of killing without suffering. But Robespierre's last moments, his muffled screams, his broken face, his forced silence, validate otherwise. Execution, no matter what the method, has always been driven by purpose in punishment, humiliation, and spectacle. The killing of Robespierre was more than the killing of a man. It was the killing of a regime in which terror ruled France. But his blood-stained death also teaches us something we would rather not learn. Even the most modern killings are never tidy. Thanks for hanging in there with me on this account, because I know it wasn't easy to hear. But by remembering, we keep history alive, unflinching and real. If you benefited from this video, please like it, share it with others who want to see the human face of history, and subscribe for more untold stories of justice, cruelty, and power.